I'm here. So I'm Michelle Wolff, if you've never encountered me before. And I'm an intuitive energy coach and Reiki master. And you can find me on every social media platform except Snapchat because I don't get it. Um, I do a live show on Periscope every week. It's Periscope on the Periscope app at Michelle Wolff 11, which is my handle for everything: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the whole 9 yards. So I'm running a group on Facebook called Awakening Souls, and it's for women who are coming into their intuitive gifts, tend to be artistic or creative in some fashion. And when I say artistic and creative, that can mean running a business. It can mean being an accountant. It can mean anything that involves you accessing your intuitive gifts and going with your hunches, learning to follow your gut feeling, those kinds of things, and bringing those intuitive gifts into the mainstream, into your daily life. So as part of that, and I'm an artist as well, portrait artist. So as part of that, I'm always looking for artists. And I ran across Julia Ostara. Am I saying that correctly? Mm-hmm. I noticed Julia because she's an artist. And of course, that's always going to catch my eye. And I asked her she just has some new Oracle decks out. And I asked you to come and talk to us because I want people to see what it means, how it looks, what your life can be like when you're paying attention to your artistic impulses, when you're listening to your intuition, and then not only just listening, but then taking action little step by little step, and how your life can be so much more rich and complex and satisfying and infuriating and all the things that come, with
alive. I think
alive with all the ups and downs and all the things. So I'll let you introduce yourself because partly I asked Julia because I was curious about her too, and so I'll let you educate.
Introduce. Hi, I'm Julia, and a lot of people call me Jules. Either is good. And I actually live somewhat near Michelle, within like an hour or so that we haven't actually physically met yet. I hope eventually. Here in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I live on the border of Georgia and North Carolina. And moving here was like where my intuition became it became easier to listen. So I want, you're talking a little bit about that, and really that's when this started opening up a lot for me. So I think finding a sanctuary where you can listen to yourself, that going with that flow with the creative. So now I think I'm opening up and sharing a lot more since I've gone through a period where I went more in first, if that makes sense. And then now I'm kind of coming out.
Yes.
And so these Oracle decks, here's the two of them, the Heart of Life and Soul Songs, are kind of a culmination of all these past years of doing that, the going in. And now I was ready to kind of share that.
I love the size. I love the size of those cards because you can just throw those in your bag and carry them with you.
Well, I like it because they're so easy. Oracle decks, like the card back there behind me, but I find that this size I use a lot more often.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to take with you and it's easy to hold in your hand. So, and I'll pick a card from that if we can to open up.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, absolutely.
I actually picked this one ahead of time, and then I'll pick one at random from the other. So this was my choice.
Where did you move from?
South Florida, most recently. Not forever, but most recently. There was a period where I went into the corporate world and I got disconnected from it, and then kind of returned back to that, which helped me return home to myself.
For sure.
If that makes sense. So that's the intuitive part. I think that's a big part of it, is kind of returning to our own core for guidance, our inner compass. That's kind of what I like to refer to it as. And that's part of what I hope that these can help. They do bring with any oracle cards, with any, that sort, and instincts to it. And so, but together, just like if you use a map, it doesn't carry you to where you're going, but it helps, right? It can help point the direction, help you navigate. And that's kind of how I think of oracle cards, is that they can do that same thing. And with the other ones, the soul songs, I often refer to kind of like an antenna, like it's helping you tune in, but it doesn't do the work. You still have to, be the one tunes into that yourself and then see what that means for you, right?
Yeah.
So I'll draw one from this the Heart of Life deck, because I love, this one is ease. And I think we could all use a little more of that, as in the opposite of dis-ease in our lives. It's healthy to me. And so it says breathe deep on there. And so I just wanted to invite everyone on the call to take a deep breath and share that breath, share that bit of life. And that, it just feels so good for me. And so that's a good way for me to kind of come to be present here. Yeah, I really wanted to be present here and let, all that homeschool and this and that go elsewhere for now to be here. So
yeah, it'll be there.
If I can draw one from this one as well. I'm going to shuffle it because I haven't done that yet. And that's another thing I like about this size, is that I can fit them in my hand to do that. And this one has a few less cards, but each one has a playlist or song that goes along with it. So it's a little
unique.
So I invite a blessing for all of us here. Mother Mystery.
Awesome.
It is. And it says whole spirit, divine womb. And to me, that just speaks so much of intuition, is connecting to that and,
I love that.
Navigating that. So beautiful. I love that card decided to show up for us.
That's powerful.
And do you have any specific questions you want to ask?
I do. Well, how many cards are in each deck?
This one has 50, there's 54, but it's 52 cards with art. And then it has a little suggestions for use, for how to use them, how to come to them, how to greet them kind of, and use them, different ideas for how to do that. Like, for example, one of them is, well, here's two different examples on this one. There's several, but in addition to what I just did, inviting kind of a blessing or wisdom to come forth to help us tune in. This one also has take a hike or stretch with it, because I think that getting into our body can be so different than when we're doing something else. So like, that's one suggestion. You might draw a card and then go for a walk. Perfect. Or vice versa, go for a walk and then card or stretch, because I do think that helps us tune into that a little differently than when we're on a screen or we're reading a book or any of those kinds of things. So that's one suggestion. And then this one also has a little suggestions for use and how to greet it. And another one that would be like a movement thing is a dance pick, because they have songs with them. And that Mother Mystery card that I chose has a long playlist actually with it. That were lots of songs that came on. I think music can speak to us a little differently.
Yeah.
And art is the same way. But so this one, the playlist for this particular one has songs that came on while I was painting it. So maybe that was even, kind of a different, I think of it as a collaboration actually, like a collaboration with Mother Mystery or the Muses, that kind of thing. And that's how I greet the canvas a lot, is kind of a combination of a playground and a temple. So it's a place to play,
I love that.
But it's also a place to get in tune with your, your soul, whatever that means to you, your spirit, your whatever, your higher wisdom, and sometimes maybe even some other influences that might have a message, that wants to come through, whatever that muse is for you. So I really like to greet the canvas as kind of a portal for those things. But the playground is important to me, because I think playing is a way to also get out of our condition.
Yes. Yes.
um,
So perfect.
ideas, And so greeting it like that, you start playing and then you start loosening up, and then your intuition starts to flow maybe a little easier than when you have all these ideas blocking things around it.
Yes.
That makes sense.
I love that you articulate that and label that. Like, this is a playground and a temple.
Mm-hmm.
It's a place to have fun and also be serious. Sacred and play together, and naming it that, and almost like uh, you know um, labeling the space. This is what the space is, and here is how I act within the space.
Right.
So helpful, because we talk about that a lot. Like, you have to play, you have to get out of your critical mind in order to produce your best work, in order to have access to the intuition that will then help you collaborate and produce your best work. That's a lot of art in those
Yes, I think a lot of it is exploration, and so you take those two together, you bring your play and you bring your spirit, and you explore with using both of that as a part of the approach, the spiritual and the playful. For me, that's what works for me, is bringing the playful and the spiritual together to kind of dance, to play together and explore together. And so these, to me, and I think, anyone this is obviously several years worth of art.
Right.
Here, combined. That one has 52, this one has 36. So there's 88 total between the two.
Yeah.
And I made them so that they could be used together, if people wanted to. And I offer them as a double decker together if people want them that way. The back sides are similar, other than just the name of the deck, so you can separate them back out if you want. But otherwise, they look the same, so that they can be used together if you want to draw it random and not have it be obvious. You can mix them up. Right.
And Julia has a coupon code for us here in a minute. We'll talk about that. So keep watching. But I wonder, I had a question. First of all, I love just calling it exploration, because that takes it, again, further out of the realm of work. Things that we might think of as tedious. And I feel like, too, by saying it that way, you're removing it another step away from there's a supposed to or a should or a right way to do it. And so I know, as an artist myself, there's a process we all have to go through when you go from doing art for yourself to putting it out in the world.
Yeah. And this was big for me going through this, because selecting what I was, willing to share or not. And so these are 88 paintings or mixed media pieces that have come forth, and out of how many? There were so many that I worked through to get to these. But then, like this one, this is a nourishment card, is not even a finished painting. And it has changed since this. So this, I also went back through, a lot of times will document, take a picture of it at certain points through the process, or scan it if I'm at a place where I kind of really like it and there's a message there that I want to save some. I call it like magic or medicine, that there's something in it right there for me at that point, that message speaks to me. So I'll pause a lot of times in those places and scan it or take a picture of it, whether or not I ever share it publicly. But that's part of my, what it's speaking to me, the intuition that's coming through at that point. And so this was just part of a bigger painting that I really, and then I went on and changed the painting, and it's not finished, and it's, it looks completely different than this now. But having it at this saving that, it ended up that some of these came out on the cards. This is another one that looks totally different now, but I saved it at that point. It was a collaboration with my kids, this particular one. So they did a bunch of stuff in the background. And then we were taking turns painting over it, taking turns painting. Anyone could add anything they wanted. And so that's also part of the letting go process, because you're not getting too attached to anything if you're letting it do that.
Right.
But these days, with the technology we have, being able to hold on to it, through a scan or a photograph is really nice, because then you can come back and say, wait a minute, I remember what she was saying to me at that point, you know, or what it was saying to me at that point. And so a lot of the stuff that I might not have thought I would put out there, I had saved in that way and then pushed it, because that's part of the artistic process, right? Is continuing to like maybe go a little too far sometimes or whatever in your exploration, because that's how you learn. Right. And so being able to save it at that stage where it was speaking to me, there was something that I liked, but it like that one, because our rule was you have to let go and let the next. I wanted to try something else on it. I wanted to keep going, you know, but I liked it there. So doing that, and then some space, some almost like the letting go of it, painting over it was some of that in those particular 2 paintings, but in others, that's not the case. Others, you know, still look the same as what they do on the card, but then having enough pause, almost like the distance makes the heart grow fonder kind of thing. Yes. Taking that time with your art to let it rest is important for me as well, because then I come back to it and I can look at it with fresh eyes, a fresh perspective, and say, okay, you know, like I might be willing to share that, or I think that has something in it for others that might be worth sharing within it. You know, there's if that spoke to me, then maybe that's also going to speak to someone else. So crossing that line of going from the personal, like actually, here's a good example. Before we started recording, I changed what was on that because it was a work in progress that I didn't know that I was ready to share, to put out there. And I'll show it to you since we're discussing this, but it may not stay like this at all. So this is one I'm working on right now, and it was on the easel back there. And you know, there's imagery in it, but you may or may not see it. It's not been brought fully forth at this point because we're still dancing together. And I actually do dance with my paintings occasionally.
Oh, that's cool. Are you using acrylic or what are you using?
I am mostly. I have, this is all mostly acrylic, paint and inks also.
Okay. Just because I know someone will ask.
I do have some, I do have some watercolor, but I don't use it as much. And I have some pastels that I use as well sometimes. And those you can see, like in this one, underneath those resist. So that's adds mystery. I like to invite, you know, that's part of the play, right? Like to just see how, so I explore and play with different tools as well. But no, I have oil paint somewhere that I've not even like cracked open to try. I do take watercolor with me, and I also use a lot of the acrylic paint pens.
Oh, that's cool.
Because those you can get more fine-tuned, you know, like draw with over your painting, but they're still acrylic.
Oh, that's really interesting.
So a lot of the cards have that mixed in with them. I'm trying to see if there's one that,
you know, what I'm hearing in your as a theme in your process is a lot of honoring. Honoring the process, honoring the sacred, honoring the divine, and trusting that when you hit a point of frustration, stop. Or when you hit a point of, I don't quite know what to do next, stop.
That's exactly where that one that was on the easel was at.
Yeah, just stop.
Right. It was at that point. And so it's taking a break. We're taking a break. Just, you know, sometimes you need to time out from that as well, or go for a walk. A lot of times I take a dance break because that just helps me to just loosen up. Really, for me, it's a big loosening up. That helps. We are so taught and geared to try to control that I need to lose that in the process to be able to get something deeper.
Right.
I guess. And sometimes it's, I don't know if depth is it's out of one side of the head or something, you know, out of the control process, which if you just saying that word makes me tighten up, makes me tense up, you know? And so I need to not be so tense. And there are times for that in the art process. If you want something like that one has some very detailed parts on one side of it that if you're not having a little more control, it's not going to look the same. So there are places for that, but that's not what makes me feel the best. So there's not a lot of that in the work that I do, just because it starts getting too tight. So it tends to be less that way.
Well, it goes back to what you said earlier about, and I say this a lot too, it's about having choice. You know, all the aspects of ourself have an appropriate time and place. And the point is to stay centered in the sacred, to know when it's time to let the controlling part have a go at it. When it's time to let, shake a tail feather and have a break time. And, when it's time to do the things that are parts and pieces of that flow, that become a whole product at the end of that.
Well, and even that's a good point with when you're ready to share it, if you're scanning it and you're photographing it and you're doing all the technical side of sharing on social media and typing it. And a lot of times they speak to me and then I try to share some of that, be the messenger, share some of that, whatever message came forth. So then that takes time to write the blog post and to do all the scanning and the editing and the, getting it to where you can do that. For me, that's that kind of other side a lot.
Yes.
It is also all of that is part of it. Because even though that's not happening on the canvas as much, there's a little bit of that. But then if you decide to take it out of your art journal or off your canvas, right? For me, they're all kind of like an art journal. Yeah. That's all part of any art that you do. I want there to be room for some mystery and a little bit of kind of magical energy to come forth, or intuition. Or just froze up on me. Where'd you go? There you are.
We do have some internet interference, and so this is another example of where we have to just trust the flow, and the parts that come through, and the parts that are like they don't come through. It's okay. And
just in life, that happens when you're painting, right? I mean, the same thing. Like, I wanted that to come forth, but it didn't. Okay, well, I'm going to just listen and trust. I repeat that word to myself a lot when I'm painting.
Interesting.
And the same even when I decided to have these printed and put them out there. Like, I did a little kind of ceremony for it and a release of them, and trust. And I'm trusting that they're going to make their way to those that are going to appreciate them and find value in them.
Yes.
And that's not up to me. That's the part where I have to just let trust take it. I mean, I originally made them for myself and for my children. I should, I guess, say that. I had a little health scare, and so it was kind of like a little fire to compile my something, put the art together.
The legacy.
So that I could more easily share it with them. And this is what came forth from that. And then, once I'd done all the work, it seemed like it made sense to make it available to others, if they would find value in it.
Well, I'm really glad that you trusted that part of the process too, because it does. And I always judge my work like, if I can help one person, then that's good enough, but it's always, of course, more than one person. I mean, it caught my attention.
The ripple effects, right? Yes. I love that idea of, and to me, that's also a very good motivation and encouragement of when you decide, when you feel comfortable that you want to share. And I do think that's a very personal thing. When I first dove back in deep into art, it was a very healing process for me. I was healing grief after my mom had died, and I needed a place to put it that was healthy and safe. To do that and to work through that, intuition and like the way that we in this culture don't necessarily handle that grieving process very well.
Pretty badly. Yeah.
Art helped me to do that in a healthier way. There were amazing synchronicities or messages, whatever you want to call it, that came through the same way an oracle card can do. That would come through. Like, I just flip at random to a dictionary page and add a word, to a collage that I was painting. And so inviting that is almost like inviting an oracle card in. You can do the same thing in your painting with collage.
That's a great example, yeah.
And I really was being spoken to that way. As an example, I was flipping to a page, I wanted the word respect. I was going to make a card and I wanted that word on there. I was quoting my mom, something that she had said about it. But instead, when I flipped to the page, the word that came to me was rest. And I started reading about it. It just happened to be on the same page. And it talked about the pause in the music. And it also talked about freedom. I can't remember exactly what it said now, but I took it and saved it and put it in my, piece of art at that time. And it really spoke to me. Her rest, she was, whatever how tight I was hanging on, or my worry about, where she was and what was going on. And so art helped me have that conversation with myself.
Yeah.
That I needed to go through to like process all of that. And so I think that is a big part of the intuitive process you say process, right? It is processing.
It is a process.
It's processing our thoughts in our head, like putting the head and the heart and all of it together. And, it's not just using one or the other. You don't throw one out when you tune into the other,
exactly.
But you don't let one be like so overpowering that you can't hear the other either, right? It's finding kind of balance, and art helps me do that. It helps me listen, and it helps me tune in to something that I'm like my intellectual can't do on its own. It needs that flow process, the intuitive side to kind of dance with, to help, balance that out and process those emotions. And I don't remember what you said that sparked me on that. But.
I don't know either, but I loved it all. And it hits on themes. I teach a 13-week group, and it's on Monday nights. And this week's word that kept coming up was trust. Mm-hmm. And this morning on Periscope, we talked about rest. The importance of yoga nidra practice and taking rest. And sleeping, but not sleeping in a different way, enlightened sleeping or whatever. So I love that, you just hit on themes that my audience will know. They're in that space right now. So I love that so much. And, so a question I have, first of all, I just want to encourage anybody watching this to really listen to those themes of honoring and trust and rest and the flow and the pause in the work, that it's not linear. And our idea of done and the divine's idea of done are often quite different.
Yes.
And when you trust that the divine will let you know, your soul, the larger part of you, will let you know when you're done. Then you get something that touches, like you said, heals you, and then offers an opportunity for other people to heal as well, or have an experience with, an engagement with.
Oh, that's what we were talking about. When you let that out, when you, make that choice, which is a choice. Yes. And
that was it.
And sometimes you're going to feel like you're not ready for that. And sometimes you're going to feel called or pushed to do that or whatever. There's all those different little delicate nuances in that deciding of when to share and who to share. I think when, where, and who, those are all, and how, those are all big things about that choice, right? So when I first started sharing it, it felt more vulnerable, obviously. That is one of the cards in here, is vulnerability, because there are times to embrace that. And it frees us as well when we take that step, right? Like it feels like, oh, okay, I can do this. I'm free of that fear or whatever it was when you take that step. But also when you choose with, I don't know if discernment's the right word, but with intention, I guess, thinking through who you're sharing it with, that to me also, I often will pray or set the intention, invite that something beyond me also work with me here, like bring the people who are going to appreciate this to see it. I did that just before we started. I put a little Palo Santo and, asked that I speak clearly and with a pure heart, and that whoever's meant to receive this will find it,
That was a much better way than how I started, with running from my house to this fifth wheel, cursing the cat that wouldn't shut up.
Well, I been there too, and it feels much better when I have the opportunity to do this.
I love
Right?
it.
It's
I
not
love
always.
that.
I mean, when I was chasing twin toddlers around the house,
Oh yes, she has twins too.
I was lucky to like show up. I mean, you know, you might have been here waiting, like, where is she? She's out there chasing those kids. There's different stages and phases for all of it, right? I mean,
Yeah, I love it.
that's also part of the sharing of when you're ready to share. It has to do with what else is going on in your life too, and whether you even have time for that. Not the time for the creation, but the time that it takes to take it from that to this conversation, right? There's a bridge there, and you have to be at a place where you have the time and can be able to give it the attention for that. And if you don't, like when I first started, I maybe didn't quite have as much of that as I do now. You know, my kids are getting older, and I'm able to take a little more. I mean, I started on my kitchen table. I didn't have a corner of my basement to claim as my own. Yeah. And everything was, one day it was homeschool books and one day it was my art stuff. And, you know, that's just how it was. But I needed to do it. Yeah. Yeah. You knew. And that's the honor to become my own intuition, right? And my own voice, and making room for that, making space for yourself. Yes. Permission. That's a big part of it, whether it's on the dining table or whether it's dinner. And I'm like, okay, I got 10 minutes before, you know, the water's going to boil. I can give 10 minutes to this little piece that I have here. Yes. That's what you were talking about, the running and the scattered. It wasn't maybe as ideal as being able to sit down here and do my little pellet and greet it that way. I didn't have the time and the space to do it that way then, but I did what I could because I still needed to honor that 10 minutes that I had, you know, to see what would come next. And sometimes something would, and sometimes it wouldn't. And, you know, it's all also not letting that disappoint you when you don't have as much time or energy to give to it, to honor that as well. You know, like you said, the pause and realize, I mean, that's definitely part of it. Like for me in January, I tend to create way more where I'm, you know, kind of like the way the trees are resting, I'm going in and I'm doing that instead of being out in the world. Like in the summer, there's, you know, more daylight and I'm more outward focused and going on vacation or whatever it is, you know, traveling and doing all that kind of thing. But then in winter, when I'm, you know, I have more cozy inside, that's also when I go more inside through my art and through me. And I noticed that. And so being able to honor that and know that there are stages and seasons, you know, in yourself, not just outside. Well, sometimes helps. The wellspring is easier to access than others. Mm-hmm. And that's just the rhythm of life. And so I appreciate everything that you're saying here because it is the stages that we all go through. And I just am constantly telling people, like, this is normal. It's normal to like spit and sputter and struggle to find your groove and then be in it and then be out of it and not know how you got there and not know how to get back. It's all normal. And then you get to the point where you're like, this is just part of it. Sometimes the signal holds, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah. Sometimes we get some warble, sometimes it's crystal clear. And every single part of that process is okay. Yeah. And our tendency to want to be like, I'm doing an interview and therefore everything must be perfect and we should look perfect and all the signals should be straight and I should add graphics at the beginning and the end. It's not necessary. It's not even realistic. It's just a conversation with life, a conversation between the two of us, and a conversation that people watching it will have within themselves as they're hearing this and feeling for themselves. Like, and I love that you just brought that word up, the conversation. Yeah. Yeah. I often think of it as communion, which to me, conversation is very similar to that, right? And it could be with nature. If I'm sitting outside painting, it could be with you during this conversation. And then when someone gets the art in whatever fashion, whether it's through oracle cards or whether it's through social media or however you choose to share it, that's another communion, another conversation, another coming together. And that everyone brings something to that. So, you know, what I put into a particular piece of art is going to be different than what someone else brings to it, right? They're going to bring their own experience and their own intuition. And so especially in something like this one that I said is, you know, in process, I don't know where it's at right now, but there, I see a baby here. I don't know if anyone else would see that, but I didn't put that there.
I see like 4 figures, like.
Yes, there are bigger figures as well.
Yeah,
but this here is like a baby profile is what I see. And then I see like a couple dancing in its head, and probably no one else might not see that, right? That's what I brought. It's like the cloud game.
Yes, yeah.
There's a silhouette here.
That's what I love about
I think of it like when you look in the clouds and different people see different things, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's the same thing can happen there. I didn't, you know, obviously I did through pouring paint, but I didn't purposefully put that there.
Right.
It just showed up in the way the paint flowed. But like I saw something there and I didn't want to cover it up because it was speaking to me, you know, and someone else might see that and not see that. They might see something totally different. So I posted a picture of just that little section of it on Instagram and said, do you see what I see? I wonder what you see. And asked other people, you know, to comment on it. Yeah. And someone saw a woman dancing and someone saw a man over here. And, you know, it's so interesting to have that conversation. That's what made me think of it, is you talking about the conversation. And the art can have a totally different conversation with different people than it even has with the person who is bringing it forth.
Yes.
And to me, that's another reason to share it, because when you do that, it might even speak to you differently when you open that, when you invite that conversation from others in. Sometimes you might be like, I didn't see that. I wonder what that has to say. Yeah. So sharing it in process, if you feel comfortable to do so, can also, like when you're at that point where you don't know what to do next, because I didn't know where I wanted to go, you know, that sometimes when you do that, you share it and you invite something in, even just from a piece of it that might, you know, help to get to the next step. And sometimes I do that with oracle cards. I have done that where I have a painting laying out and I don't know where I want to go next. And so I, you know, invite some guidance or whatever from an oracle deck, and I'll draw a couple cards and lay them out on the painting. And maybe that'll steer me in a new direction, you know? So when you having those tools, when you get to that point that you can kind of open up and not feel like you have to know. Yeah. It's a dance between surrender and choice for me. I've been thinking a lot about that recently. Like when you surrender to, you know, the mystery or whatever, and when you decide to put your choice on top of it. Right. And that's not always easy to know, but the more you do it, the more you start, you know, getting comfortable. Yeah. With it, I guess.
Well, and that really speaks to
when you don't want to make the choice, you might want to invite a little help.
Yeah, you don't have to do it by yourself. And we say this in everything I teach. You won't know what the blocks and limitations are until you take the action and run into them. You won't find them by thinking about them. You have to go ahead and try posting a piece of your art that's incomplete, and then you'll activate all the stuff in you that's like, what are you doing? Are you crazy? This is garbage. And you'll activate that on purpose. If you're doing it on purpose, then you can hear it, start to counteract it and ease your way through until it gets easier and easier over time.
Well, that's another thing I've been working within myself, you know, talking to what is commonly called the ego. I'm calling it my guardian recently. Just
I love that.
Noticing that's what it's there, that's what it wants to do. That like it wants to protect me. It wants to be my guardian. And so we're getting to know each other. I mean, it's part of me, or critic. You could call it your guardian if you want, or whatever, you know, that being able to have that conversation in a way that you can appreciate what is happening there, but then choose to say, you know what, I know that that's trying to protect me, or that's, you know, feeling like it needs to be my guardian right now, but this is something I need to do because I want to expand, or I want to, grow, or I want to learn, or I want to explore. For me, it's huge about exploring. And that includes exploring the response from others, but not being too accountable to it. Like that's a healing for me. That's a big healing, because I used to be so externally driven. I call myself a recovering valedictorian because I was so driven by the grades that like, that's all I knew at that point. I got so into that's what I witnessed, and I fell for it. Yeah. I fell for that,
a lot of
drive, that external validation.
And it was appropriate for the time. We have to survive in those systems, do our best. And then at a different point in life, we start to say, do I really want to keep living this way? Do I really want to be limited?
But that's a big part, recognizing that when you're getting ready to share something and deciding, does that matter anymore? Yeah. I say it with an intention and a prayer a lot of times, not every time I post to social media, but overall that is, I have that approach to it. So I feel that it is woven into the way that, I share and approach, because I look at it and I greet it that way. Yeah. And so, yes, I do so in a way that I hope, that it's going to be for the good of whoever sees it, that it's going to be a blessing, that it's not going to be, I don't want any harmful intentions out there when I'm sharing anything. And sometimes I pause and don't share for that reason, because sometimes I might be, aware that someone I know is going through something that might trigger. Okay. And just even being aware of that, I can say, you know what, maybe now is not the time to share that with that person, or in a space that is going to impact that person. And that is part of the choosing how and when, and being considerate to that. Yeah. But at the same time, I don't want to, it's asking, is it a fear that I don't want to be seen, or that I don't want to post it that way? Right. Or is it really because I think that that's just not the healthiest place or time to share it? Yeah. Asking that question is important for me, so that I know that it's not like, I'm not afraid of, what someone's going to say.
Right. And we're not responsible for, so being considerate, but not holding yourself responsible for how it's going to impact everybody. Yes. Which can be very limited.
Well, and a lot of times it might just be in the way that I choose to share it, so that it's recognizing that, like, I'm on cloud 9 right now and this is really happy, but I know that's not everybody, and so I want to share this joy. Yeah. At the same time, and maybe in other times it's grief, like this one is called Luna's Tears. And it was a very vulnerable time when I was first painting it and going through it, and I shared that as well, but choosing how to share those things, so that it's acknowledging that this is what I am sharing right now. This is what I'm going through. How do you process this? That's your thing, kind of thing. If that, and a lot of times I will post it with a question, so that it's not me assuming that everyone's sad right now, or everyone's happy right now, or, that kind of thing. Even like with a response to I don't watch the news, but I gather enough of it from social media.
You're not missing anything.
Well, I can't hardly miss it. If I'm going to be on social media, I'm going to find out about it. Right. And I do limit my time for that, partly for that reason, because I need to protect my space of what I'm feeding to myself. Right. Really. That it matters to me, the energy that I'm consuming, or being exposing myself to. But you can't avoid some things, knowing about some things that are out there. And I also don't want to be so in denial that I'm acting as if that doesn't happen, because then it's hard to connect with others that are going through that place. Yeah. But doing so from a place that it's like I'm not assuming that everyone is crying today because of that event that happened over there. I don't want to make that assumption. Yeah. Right. And if I make that post in a way that that's what I mean by consideration. Like if I make it in a certain way, it's like lumping everyone into my perspective. Right. And I know that everyone's got their own. And so leaving room for that, I guess is all I'm saying. So like in the way that you choose to share, I think that can make a difference. If you choose to share in a way that you're leaving room for they got their own thing, and here's what I have to share.
So in the creation, what it's an aspect of what you're sounds like you're saying is you're following the intuitive flow and impulses in the creation of it, and in the sharing of it,
Yes.
and in the marketing of it, and in all the stages of it, whatever it is at the moment, whether that's a spreadsheet, piece of art. You're listening,
Keep that with
inviting,
you. Mm-hmm.
being
Definitely.
open
Don't
to.
don't trap it on the canvas.
Right.
Don't leave it there. Like bring it. I mean, so much of what to me the creative process does is mirror or prepare you for some of those other sorts of interactions, right? It's medicine for that, or messages to help you with that. Like learning to trust there helps me learn to trust in other ways.
Yes, it permeates everything.
Yeah.
And that's what I want people to understand, that
Yeah.
intuition it's not just a toy, that's fun to satisfy your curiosity. It permeates and enhances your entire life when you start to use it in a conscious, intentional, collaborative way. I love that.
Yeah.
So,
and this is something that we don't learn, or at least I didn't learn like in school, but part of our homeschool is that we do try to, have that conversation and discuss that.
Good.
Because it's so different. And if we're not taught to trust and we're not taught to listen to ourselves, to nature, to others in a way that is, respectful and truly attentive, and we're taught how to just like manipulate the system or the grades or this or that. Yes, there's a place for that. I'm like, it's like a tightrope, with homeschool, to teach my kids to like, okay, you're going to find yourself in this system. So you have to know how to navigate it. Right. But at the same time, there's this other, aspect that maybe isn't currently showing up there or appreciated there, but that is just as important, if not more so.
Yeah. We can have it, but we can have all. We can have the both and. Yeah. We can have the both. The whole thing. And just being fluid in which aspects of ourselves we're accessing, depending on the appropriateness of the situation.
Right. But it's a balance. I mean, it's a delicate dance to find that.
For sure. And practice. Practice. You have to start actually doing it in order to find how your flow process feels to you, so that you can move very efficiently through the world, even though it might look like you're doing this instead of this.
Yeah.
This way is often way more efficient once you learn. You're like, but my thing's over there. Well, no, it is, and you're going to get there faster if you go here first.
This cycle or the circle or, all of that. Especially where we live, like where I live, it's all curvy roads, and that's so like, if the crow flies, they might get there that way. But if I try to go that straight line, I'm going to end up in a ditch or in the woods or in the trees. And so that's a very like easy visual for me, to the way you're describing it, to say, okay, but it would take me way longer to try to go that way where there's not a road or where I can't,
Great example. That's a great example. Yes. Yeah. If you try and bushwhack your way across the mountain, it's not going to be very efficient.
But at the same time, as I'm saying that, I also hear, but I don't always want to go where the road already is.
True.
So there's two,
Yeah.
That's all part of that I take, just because it's the easier or shorter one. Or might there be something over there that is more calling to me, and maybe I do need to work my way through the weeds for that, if that's what it is.
Yeah.
It could be both, like you said, right? It's not always listen and decide, and you don't always know. And so it's also taking that step and then saying, you know what, this is not so good. There's a bunch of briars over here. I want to go that way instead.
Yeah. There's a bear around the corner. Yeah.
Be willing to change, right? Change. Yeah. And for me, that's also something I think we all have to learn, is like, you don't have to stick it out. There are times when that's not. There are times when you do, when my kids were born and they were in the NICU, I didn't have much choice. Like we had to, just kind of stick it out and hope that things were going to work out. And then, but there are times when you don't, and you do have a choice, and you can say, you know what, I want to change my path, or I want to try something like when we moved here, that was part of it, was like trying something new. And we didn't know if my husband was going to be able to work remotely, if our internet would be good enough. And his company's still in South Florida that he works for. And it was a big risk. Like, okay, we're going to go for it. And if it doesn't work out, then we'll figure it out, but it was worth it. It was trying it. And you do that on the canvas and decide that it's worth it. You can do that in sharing your art and decide that it's worth it. And sometimes you might learn that that wasn't the best way to share or place to share. And I've definitely gone through that too, where I've learned that, you know what, that particular group or whatever is not syncing up with me. We're not on the same energy or wavelength or whatever. And so it's not healthy for me. Maybe I wish them well. Maybe it is for them, and that we all have our own. Journey and energy, but enough to stick that one out. if that's the case, if there are places where you don't, that's part of it, right? That tuning in and making your choices based on that, your intuition, instead of someone says you're gonna be a failure if you quit, don't be a quitter, or whatever. Well, sometimes maybe I need to quit that so that I can make room for this, this or something better, right? Thing.
This or something better. Yes, always something better. Be sure you guys always throw in the something better. We don't know as much as we think we know, or as much as we'd like to.
And when I was putting these out, that's part of what, I said is like, I didn't order a ton of them. You mentioned bringing the intuition into the marketing. And for me, that's something that has just always been something I've been resistant to, the actual marketing part. When I can see it as, what, this has value and I have something to offer. This costs me money, so I can't just give it away, right? So then I have to.
Well, and it's appropriate. We talk about that a lot too. It's appropriate to have a monetary exchange.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Sacred reciprocity, and there's lots of ways for that. And money is one tool for that, as kind of a tithe to the muse is the way I looked at it for myself when I made the investment in the printing. So I made a relatively small investment. I only printed a few of each one, like 30 of each deck to get started, to see if they were going to be, if people were receptive to them or not. And the way I looked at that initial investment, what I could make was that tithe to the muse. Like, okay, I'll put this much into it. And then I'm handing it over, honey, like it's up to you. And if it doesn't, if you don't cross my path, if it's not speaking to people, then so be it. I'm grateful for that I have them. I'm grateful to have them for my children. I'm grateful for the process to have created them. And I share this because I think this applies to all artists when you're going through this process.
For sure. Yeah.
That you can be grateful for the process and whatever the messages that have come through to you, the wisdom, the blessings, the joy, if you've had joy, the frustrations that you've learned to overcome, if you've, encountered that in the process, all of it. And so I was able to look at it that way, as like, this has been a gift to me to create them. And then, I offer them because I think I don't want to be so attached to that I feel the need in the marketing to feel like I need to focus all my time on pushing that.
Right.
If that makes sense, because that's not healthy for me. Maybe for some people it is, but for me, that doesn't feel good and that doesn't feel healthy. And so I want to go create more, and I want to do, like, I've created a community recently, similar to some of the groups you're doing, for ritual and sharing in, how that comes into your practice and various things like that, the way that I greet it with the playground and the temple.
I love that. So this might be a good
that kind of stuff, and some of the offerings that I do for leading the intuitive art process.
Okay. So this might be a good time then to let people know where they can find you and connect with you and get your cards and learn more about your processes. Because I was going to ask you if you are teaching out there, but you just answered that question. So I know that my group will want to hear more from you. So tell us where we can find you and interact with you and learn from your wisdom.
Thank you.
You have beautiful things to offer. So
I appreciate that.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
you helping me to share that. Thank you for inviting me to do this.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I couldn't wait. I was like, oh, I hope she says I don't even
And
know
and
you.
I
And I was
love this
like,
kind of conversation with kindred spirits. So like
and I was like, oh, I'm just gonna ask her. Oh, she's
spend way too much time talking, but
oh no, you're fine.
But it's lovely to have to get to share any of, to have this kind of conversation. And I would love to hear from people that are watching this. So definitely share the link with me so I can share it on my
yes.
as well. Yeah. And
we'll spread it far and wide.
and hopefully I can, interact some that way. But my website is Thrive True, Thrive, like a thriving plant, THRIVE, True, like Thrive True to you, to, your intuition. So thrivetrue.com is my website. And I don't know if you have a little spot where you can add a link.
I'll put all the links and stuff with the wherever it gets posted. I'll put it on YouTube. It'll take some time to do that because internet. But we'll get it out there, and then we'll put we'll make clickable links.
Okay, perfect. So that's the main page, and then thrivetrue.com/invitation.
Okay.
And I'll send it to you so you can just copy and paste it. But so I'm just sharing it to say it. That page shares a lot of what it has a link to my newsletter and all that kind of thing. So if people want to sign up for that, then along with that, they'll get a coupon for the deck if they want, if they're interested in that. And also it shares about the communities that I host and courses that I host. So that page shares a lot about all the different offerings, and they'll get the most recent newsletter, which has that coupon for the holidays, if anyone, is interested. And well, they fit in a stocking, which I like.
It's perfect. I was really happy to see that size, because I was like, that is perfect. So you can just.
Well, I was hesitant when I first had them printed. I printed a lot of samples to make sure I had a quality that I was comfortable with offering. And they had the normal tarot size card, and that is always harder for me to work with. I have like 20 decks, I love them. That's why I use them and I appreciate them. I definitely think, and it's a great way to get art for one thing.
Yeah, for sure.
I have some from Stallone for that reason. I love them. And then also, it's like when I was a kid, I had the Magic 8-Ball, that you would shake up and listen to. I never had Oracle cards. I didn't know, wasn't introduced to them until I was older. And I would have loved something like that at that age as well, as a teenager, and starting to have all these questions and ideas, and like you only have like your peer group and what to turn to, and it would have been a lovely tool to have been introduced at that age to start learning and doing. So I've always been into wanting to have that conversation, but not having as many tools to do that. And the Canvas and Oracle cards are great tools for, helping along that path. And they don't come with a long guidebook like some do on purpose, because I think that
I think it's better that way.
I'm always tempted, but these have a little bit on each card. There's a little kind of sub, bit that helps with that.
Your own process.
And I think especially the art can speak to you differently that way. Just like I said with that one, you might see something different than what someone else did, or the word is very different. Like that word power. I used to not like that word very much because it felt like it was power over someone. But then when you find it as your power, not that you're over anyone else, but within yourself, and it's like a healthy that enables you to thrive. That's a very different feeling of the same word, a big thick guidebook, but it does have links on my website for each card if you want to see, the blog post about that.
Oh, that's great.
A piece of art or deeper into it might also speak to the recipient, right? But I think that it's not an everyday thing. There might be certain cards and certain times that you want to go and look at that. So I did it that way. Both it kept the cost a little more
Sure.
reasonable to do it that way.
Yeah.
And it makes it available, like, so that it opens up more, I think, for you. I think it's just more encouraging for you to tune into your own.
Yeah, that's what I tell people in the group is just, look at the imagery first, let whatever wants to come, and then read the book later, but listen to yourself first.
Yeah.
Let yourself be triggered and opened first.
Right. And the same with like this one, with the song one, that's one of it too, is like, it has the playlist that might speak to you, and sometimes the lyrics and sometimes there's not, but that even just the feeling of it might speak to you. But another thing I suggest is if it prompts a song for you, which may not be the same one that it does for me, but being able to open it and then does something pop into your head? Right. That's what's singing in your head, right? Like, now, is that something you want to be singing in your head, or do you want to change the lyrics? That's a big part of it, right?
Yes.
Making that choice, being aware of where'd that come from, and do I want that there, or do I want to make a different, choice, a different soundtrack in my head?
Yeah.
So we'll make sure I send you the link for those. Okay. And I'm Thrive True on Instagram and Facebook as well. Same thing. Thrive True is what I use for all of that at the moment, as a kind of affirmation that everyone who types it, we may thrive true.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Oh, that's really clever, actually. That's really good. Okay. Thank you so much. And is there anything else you'd like to, before we wrap up, anything you want to say, or? I'm so grateful.
Well, I have so much enjoyed the conversation. I love being able to
for hours.
Talk to others that have, things. And that is nice to have some companions, across your paths every once in a while that you can have these conversations with. So I really enjoyed it. I want to just thank you for having me here, and definitely invite those that hear it and listen to go to that thrivetrue.com/invitation, and then you can see if any of that speaks to you, if you'd like. A lot of the courses that I do are pay what you want. So they can actually, if they're the ones that I offered last year, I've set them all up for this year.
Oh, wow.
So that I want anyone who feels called to explore that, to be able to do so. So that way, whatever is affordable, they are affordable is my point. Okay. That way people can choose what they can afford. And, I've already done the work. I've already put it out there. So it's there. And I see that as kind of a way of meeting, in the middle.
Yeah. Okay.
Be able to offer it and have others be able to receive it. So it's all on, there's links to all that on my website. So
I'm very excited to go explore myself. I just skimmed a little. And so I'm looking forward to digging into what you offer. And I know that the people in my group and the people who follow me have all these same interests, of course. And so I'm very grateful that you were able to spend time with us. I know you're a busy woman. And I just love providing more resources and more examples of, like, here's a woman who's doing what you want to do. Look at her, learn from her. See what she's doing. Yeah. We talked about that this morning. It's like, find someone who's doing what you want to do. And
I'm still in. Well, I've done that, right? I found a lot of mentors that were doing that. And so I am grateful for that. And there was a time, there's still times, right, when some of that voice comes in and you're like, oh, I wish. And it can be on the edge of envy. And then I try to switch that and say, you know what? I'm grateful for that example that says it is possible.
Absolutely.
That's the way I'm now trying to look at it. I'm not where I want to be yet in terms of being able to reach the amount of people I might hope to reach eventually, and be able to contribute to my family in terms of, releasing some of the burden off of my husband financially and all of that. Like, I'm still, growing and reaching that place. So there are people that I can look at, and part of me says, oh, I wish I were there. But the other part of me says, I'm glad she's there because that means I can go.
You have a model.
It's possible,
Yeah.
you know?
It is
And
possible.
I love that. I love seeing that as an example and looking at it that way. For me, that helps me to look at it that way.
Absolutely.
And,
So, yeah.